Hey all, here OS Reviews. About 2 weeks back, we did a unboxing and first impressions look at the Bigme B751C, which is a compact 7-inch e-ink e-reader slash tablet that is actually pretty affordably priced for a color e-ink device, coming in at sub $250. And now we're coming out with a more complete, in-depth look slash review after spending a bit more time with this device. So as a quick refresher, again, it's very compact at 7 inches, and it's using a Kaleido 3 color e-ink panel, which is able to mix colors together to produce up to 4,096 shades. So if you are trying to read back comics, for example, it's going to be just a bit more interesting to look at compared to historical e-ink has been mostly in monochrome black and white, especially lower end devices such as Kindle e-readers, which are more affordably priced. And when color e-ink first came out, it was just much more expensive, and it's good to see that it's now becoming a bit more affordable from a production point of view. Aside from being capacitive in terms of the touchscreen, it also supports a active stylus pen. However, it's not a Wacom EMR pen in this particular instance, so it still requires one quad A battery to operate that can last around 6 months to 1 year before you have to swap it out. It does support pressure sensitivity and, again, note-taking that we'll take a closer look at in a moment. Otherwise, what I do appreciate about the design of the Pocketnote 2 here is it has physical keys on the side that you can use to turn pages left and right when you're reading, or again opt for the touchscreen. So you have two modes of interaction compared to a lot of other recent e-reading devices tend to get rid of those mechanical keys. This just feels a bit more tactile and responsive. Now underneath the hood, it's powered by a MediaTek octa-core processor with 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of built-in storage that can be augmented via a micro SD card. So it's actually very similar to a lot of the entry-level to mid-range Android tablets with regular IPS LCD screens out there. And as a result, this thing has enough horsepower to run standard Android apps. And you do have access, in fact, to the full Google Play Store for installing other Google services, as well as sideloading APKs if you desire. So other reading apps can be fully run on this unit. In addition, it has a full backlight. You can make it warmer versus cooler based on your preferences, as you can tell here, if you're reading at daytime versus in the night, and you can turn the backlight completely off if you want to consume even less power. The unit is otherwise capable of connecting to both Wi-Fi as well as Bluetooth if you want to pair it with wireless headphones and listening to audiobooks. And both the stylus as well as the folio case are again included as part of the MRSP, so it's a fairly good value. There is a magnetic latch to the folio case, so when you close it up, it automatically will turn off to consume less power and then wake up when you turn it open once again. So a closer look here at the software experience. It's intuitive once you get used to it. There is a side bar that you can scroll through, categorizing different types of applications. The first one here is for meetings, and this is great if you are, again, in a business environment where you have to record an entire meeting, maybe with multiple people, and at the same time, you're able to jot down notes. Here's a quick example, by the way, of the different textures of pens that you have available using the stylus. There is a kind of brush style up top here. There's also a pencil that kind of reminds me of charcoal. It's a pretty convincing effect, as you can tell there on the e-ink screen, and also a ballpoint pen, where regardless of how hard you're pressing, it will always show up in the same pressure. So you can press lightly and still have a consistent stroke, compared to the pencil as well as the brush alternatives are going to be a little bit better if you want that true granularity for pressure sensitivity. So here's an example of us pressing a little bit harder versus more light. You can tell that there will be differences in the stroke, and it's relatively responsive for a non-Wacom stylus, that is. Otherwise, the palm rejection is handled quite well, so I can also put my entire hand on here and kind of write at the same time. It doesn't really interfere with it. And you can also choose between different highlighting modes as well to really take advantage of the color display. So here are some of the options, and you can then select over the region that you're trying to highlight, and afterwards it will pop open there for better annotation. The meeting mode here can afterwards transcribe all of the notes that you're recording as an audio snippet into text. So here's kind of a quick example. And that is captured using the built-in microphone as well as the speaker here on the edge of the unit. But we can then tap on More and go into File Transcribe, and it will then convert the entire audio recording after about 30 seconds or so into the typed out result that you can then copy and paste more easily. The accuracy isn't 100%, but it's still a pretty thoughtful extra and comes bundled in. It's not an extra service that you have to pay more for. Now, under this particular notepad, you can also lasso to kind of resize and rearrange elements on the page. Now, the next tab over is going to be General Notes. So as compared to Meeting Notes, it's going to be a little bit more simplified in terms of the template and layout. You don't get the voice recording capability on General Notes. And again, the pressure sensitivity as well as the color display kind of comes into form in some of these sketches that I tried out earlier that kind of shows off what the color E-Ink panel here is capable of reproducing. It's not going to be as vibrant and contrast rich compared to a LCD screen or an OLED screen, of course, but for a ink-like texture for E-Ink in general, I think it's still doing a fairly good job. And as a reminder, one of the benefits of E-Ink screens like this is it actually consumes no power at all if the page isn't being refreshed. Now, you also have different layers to play around with. In addition, you can insert other images onto the drawing here as well, such as different shapes, templates. You can rearrange the sidebar here as well, photos as well, and text can also be inserted onto the page. And because it is technically running on Android, you can connect it to wireless Bluetooth keyboards as well if you're trying to use it as some sort of E-Ink typewriter. So all in all, even though the stylus isn't going to be quite as 100% accurate and many levels of sensitivity as, again, a true Wacom EMR pen, it's still decent enough, I have to say, for the price range. You get a pretty convincing effect. It seems like printed text on paper. The next library tab then goes into PDFs and other documents that you have on the device. You're able to also highlight as well as annotate directly on the pages themselves, as you can tell there, and generally work well enough. You also have pinch to zoom support, so you can actually pan around a little bit more for a larger PDF document. In general, it seems to do a decent job. Down below here, you can also go into a split screen view if you want to have the document open as well as a notepad open on the side, so you can do a little bit more handwriting while looking at the document, as well as two documents open side by side as well. Long hold on a single word, you are able to then pull up the dictionary definition, as you can tell there, as well as the pronunciation guide, and you can also add a additional annotation onto this particular note as well, also displaying how far along you are in the document, as well as the battery percentage at the bottom bar. You can swipe up from the middle here to go back home into the previous page. Here are some other examples of PDFs that show off a little bit more color as well, such as map information, and again, it all seems to, for the most part, render in a pretty responsive way with that annotation support that is directly available using the stylus. Now, the next tab over is going to be storage. You can quickly gauge to see essentially a file manager of other documents and how much memory is available on the device before going down into the full app center. And on here, we have some applications including OneDrive built on in, as well as other ones like WPS Office, as well as webtoons that I installed myself using the Google Play Store support on the device. You'll also find a handful of other cloud services for backing up your data onto Dropbox, Google Drive, as well as Microsoft OneDrive if you prefer. And one application that we did take a look at in our unboxing and first impressions video was the AI Assistant, which is kind of a ChatGPT-like alternative that is able to talk back and provide you with different recommendations using a large language model. So in this example, we told it to create a 3-day plan for visiting Las Vegas, and it was actually quite fast and responsive in generating some recommendations. It remembers the previous queries as well, so not bad if you're trying to leverage that. But since it does have the full Google Play Store support, there's nothing stopping you from just using something like Google Assistant or Google Gemini, since there is the built-in microphone, or you can install the regular ChatGPT app yourself if you want to play around with it, like on any phone or tablet. There's also a simple email client down below. Now, the next tab over is going to be Office, so it sorts Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, and PowerPoints separately from the main notes and also the PDFs that we saw there above. So on here, it's only for Office-related documents, and if you tap on a doc, you have similar capabilities when it comes to direct annotation on the page, in addition to pinch in and pinch out. In this particular instance, it has a little bit more robust compatibility with resizing since it's just text information, but overall, again, it is working well enough, and you also have the ability for it to automatically go through page turns for you. For example, turning the page every 5 or 10 seconds instead of you having to manually trigger that if you prefer. Further down below here is a voice translation mode. It uses the microphone to capture what you're saying, except it's more of a direct, real-time translation that happens in front of your eyes. You can think of it as an alternative to having a translator. That being said, the languages being supported are unfortunately a little bit limited at this moment, or perhaps it's because Bigme is a bigger presence in their main market in China, and so all of the languages that are available by default are from Chinese to another second language, for example, to English, to Spanish, so on and so forth, but it doesn't seem like you have the capability of translating between Spanish and English, so Chinese is always one of the options there. So hopefully that's something they can improve on maybe in a future software update. So if we tap on the bar here, you can see this is the full list of the 2 translation modes that we have to select between, but if Chinese and another language happens to be what you're looking for, then it can be handy, I suppose. And accuracy is decent. It saves it as an audio recording, and then you also see the translated result down below. Now next, we also have just kind of a cloud tab. This is perhaps not going to be widely used by everyone, but if you happen to create a Bigme account, they also give you a little bit of free cloud storage that backs up your data this way, although again, you can always opt for something like Google Drive or OneDrive yourself. And then last but not least, it's kind of a task manager, which you can also trigger on the very top row of icons by tapping on this particular key. It will open up all the different programs that we have running simultaneously in the RAM of this device. Again, at 4 gigabytes, it's plentiful, especially for an e-reader, and you are able to hop back and forth between open programs, instances, as well as close them down to just consume a little bit less of the RAM and memory. So once we are satisfied, we can go back. Some other quick launch shortcuts up top include the ability to jump into all of your programs here at once. You can also quickly jump into advanced settings just by tapping along there, as well as pull down the notification/shortcut tray, which you can also trigger just by generally swiping down on the top right-hand side, and it's pretty responsive for an e-reader. You're able to access a Eink center, which gives you a few different ways for refreshing the display. For example, whether you want more refreshes, whether you want something that's maybe less frequent but is going to provide you with fewer latency. If you're trying to scroll up and down through a document, for example, you don't want it to necessarily flash every couple of seconds. That might get a little distracting. So depending on what you're doing, whether you're trying to consume a little bit of a moving animation, a short video clip, if you have to, you can play around with the refresh rate, a frequency down below here, as well as the color mode as well, whether you want it to be more of a vibrant effect, turn it all the way down if you only want to use the black and white mode. Now, aside from this, shortcuts including a screen recording mode, as well as an ultra power saving mode, in addition to a screen rotation mode, airplane mode, and a screenshot mode, as well as mirrorcast for putting the screen onto something like a Google Chromecast can also be found, which can be quite handy, similar to any standard Android smartphone or tablet, but great to find over here. So if we jump into kind of the Office mode here, I also wanted to point out that for importing documents, you don't have to only connect it to a computer and then drag and drop files over yourself, or of course you can connect to Google accounts, other cloud drives directly by signing into the device, but the other mode that you can use is called Wi-Fi import. It's actually going to trigger a QR code that you can scan with your phone, and as long as your phone as well as the e-reader are both connected to the same Wi-Fi network, you're able to transfer files directly from the phone or computer directly to the device. By using a very simple web UI, you tap on Select File from your phone, and after a couple of seconds, it will then be automatically saved over to the memory of the e-reader. It's surprisingly fast as well. For some of these documents, which are around, let's say, a couple of megabytes, it only takes around 2 to 3 seconds. EPUBs, Word documents, text files all seem to work quite well with direct annotation support. Now here's also a quick example of, again, using the Webtoon app, very similar to just having kind of comics, but in this instance it's using scrolling up and down, and perhaps more importantly, the content here is going to be in color. So this is actually going to be one of the benefits of having a color screen here, a Kaleido 3 panel, is you just get a little bit more of that contrast that might be a bit more attractive as you're consuming this content. That being said, webtoon in particular, again, is a medium where you typically scroll up and down to read the entire comic, kind of panel by panel from the strip, as opposed to a conventional PDF that displays everything in a snapshot view. The benefit is it's scaled a little bit better, I think, for a smaller screen device like this, and the details are kind of blown up. The downside, though, is again, Eink still has a few limitations when it comes to ghosting, and even though the refresh rate, I think, is actually quite good for this panel, it's not kind of randomly flashing too much, and even though it's not doing that, it still doesn't have quite as bad ghosting as prior generation Eink panels. So for the type of display that it has, it really is quite commendable, but obviously you can still see some residue on the panel if you are just scrolling continuously compared to a true page turn per se that might refresh the information. That being said, there is kind of a dot that you can tap on the edge to bring up some additional controls, including a manual refresh that you can trigger to clean up some of the artifacts. But for, again, webtoon, because you are just continuously scrolling up and down, always tapping on that may not be always practical, but still this gives you an idea. Again, the colors that it's capable of reproducing may not be 100% as vibrant as a true IPS screen or, again, an OLED panel, but still just makes it a little bit more enjoyable if you're into illustrated artwork. I would say the resolution and detail quality of the panel is also, I think, a little bit better than I was expecting, and I think part of that has to do with this being squished down to a 7-inch screen. So as a result, text details for the most part still seem to be quite sharp. Again, one of the benefits of Eink is even if you have the backlight turned off, which is helpful, again, if you are reading in really low light environments, but if you are in ultra bright conditions, such as in direct sunlight, the experience is super similar to printed text on paper. And what that means is even when there is direct glare on the screen, it still is completely legible. Here's a quick example of that, compared to the same effect if I had it on an iPhone or iPad would completely wash out with the reflections and glare. In fact, the brighter the environment is, the better, in a way, Eink screens tend to look. Aside from this, as we touched on in our unboxing and impressions video, you also have a full-blown web browser on board that allows you to download APK files as well as other PDFs if you're trying to find them over the web. And generally, it's pretty responsive. Here's also a quick animation and what it looks like. And even though there is a fast refresh rate that you can trigger for videos, it's still not really recommended at the end of the day. If you are watching back YouTube or Netflix, you really should be doing that on your phone, even though there are some software optimizations that are available from Bigme's part. And you can also pull up the keyboard to, again, search up something else, such as a website. And if we do a quick search, here's an example of how it loads back a slightly more complex page. Actually not bad at all. You just get this slightly more, again, beautiful e-ink display, which is going to be less stressful for your eyes. Again, very similar to printed paper. If you're trying to read something on a news article, check out some quick weather information, it's more than serviceable enough using the built-in browser, which also has tabbed browsing support at the very top here as well. So all in all, not bad. Last but not least, when it comes to the battery life, this is going to vary quite a bit depending on if you have the backlight turned on or not. So if you have the backlight on 24/7, then expect it to drain at a similar rate compared to a phone or tablet. Even in a worst case scenario though, I was still able to use it for about 2 days or so with the backlight on continuously before it completely died out. But if I have the backlight turned off and I'm turning also the Wi-Fi off when I'm not using it, then just like on other Kindle e-readers, it's able to stretch into weeks as well as even potentially months on standby without really draining quite as quickly. So it completely depends on how much you're refreshing it and if the backlight is being on, but all in all, not bad, I have to say. So that is more or less it as far as our closer look and kind of official review of the Bigme Pocketnote 2, the B751C. And all in all, I have to say it's shaking up to be a very good value, compact e-note/e-reader tablet, and it has plenty of features, pretty much anything that you would possibly want tucked into just a smaller size. I actually find this to be very convenient just to throw into a bag and take with me compared to, again, something like the Kindle Scribe and Remarkable 2, which are awesome, but they are similar to a full-size piece of paper, so you do have to carry more weight and be more delicate with it when you are carrying it around to prevent it from bending or cracking, versus this is just a lot more easy to throw around and not really worry about it. The stylus perhaps may not be as sensitive as Wacom EMR, but still gives you good pressure sensitivity for general note-taking. I think it's good enough for most users. And the software experience, for the most part, it feels pretty intuitive with different categories for note-taking, business transcriptions, as well as just general PDFs, Word documents, and it's all quite easy to sync that information over as well. So if you are content with a slightly smaller form factor, again, I think this is an excellent value, priced at sub $250 with all those extras already included, from the case to the stylus, and again, just one of the better offerings, I think, on the market at this point in time. You can check out more details if interested in the links down below, but for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the pretty impressively spec'd and overall well-performing Bigme Pocketnote 2, aka the B571C.